That's what it is. Welcome to Bout It podcast number 4. And our guest today is Mr. Justin Thornton. And he's here to talk about his career in combat sports. So, why don't you start off by telling us a little bit about your past, Justin?
Well, I mean, everybody always wants to know what made you want to be a fighter, because it takes a special kind of person that wants to get locked into a cage with somebody trying to kill them.
Right?
I, I always just said that I always wanted to be a Ninja Turtle when I grew up. So this was as close as I could get.
Okay, so Justin, who was your favorite Ninja Turtle?
Michelangelo and Raphael.
Oh,
Somewhere
yeah,
between serious and party. Yeah.
yeah. I'm definitely Team Raph. Okay, so you wanted to be a Ninja Turtle. So when did you start in the combat sports?
Well, when I was really young, probably 8 or 9, my parents started me with a taekwondo,
Hmm.
and I'm not gonna lie, that lasted about 3 days. The second, the second I realized that if I really took off at one of these other kids swinging that had these higher belts, that I really don't think that they can do anything. And then half of them, and then we weren't going to be punching anything but the air for like 6 months, and not even like shadow boxing and boxing is one thing. At least you feel
Hmm.
like you're knocking everybody out. When you're just standing there, huh, huh. I'm not saying it's not great for taekwondo guys, but when I'm getting ready to fight somebody in a cage, that just, or well, it wasn't even a cage back then. It was just hoping to get into kickboxing or boxing back then.
Oh,
But
okay,
now everything's heading toward MMA and Muay Thai.
right. Um, okay, so you started out with Taekwondo, and then what'd you break into from there?
When I got about 13, I boxed for about 3 years. Um, and then after that, I started going to whenever I saw the first UFC. I mean, Hoist Gracie made everybody want to start doing jujitsu and fight. I went to all the
Right.
martial arts guys in town, and even a lot of the guys out of town. And I'd be like, hey, will you teach me full contact? Just about every one of them at Taekwondo, Ishinru, all of them were like, why would you want to do that? I'm like, I would like to be in the UFC. And they go, that's stupid. No. And pretty much just walk off. Like they didn't even want to take my money and just halfway teach me. I mean, that, and what ended up happening was I ended up getting online and searching all around for the closest coach I could that was the best coach. And I'm looking for guys that have, as many martial arts as I can: Wing Chun, Ishinru, Kyokushin. And I finally found a guy named Donald Mayu in Baton Rouge.
Hmm.
And I emailed him, and he was like, yeah, man, I'd love for you to come on down. And shoot, I started going there. I drove up there probably 3 or 4 days a week for 3 or 4 years. And then I started fighting a lot. Now I coach my own team and still fight as much as I can.
Yeah. So right now, you, I know that you mentioned boxing, and you still have been kind of doing MMA.
Yeah, well, I really kind of got sick for a couple of years, had some stomach issues. Then I had just a couple nagging injuries sticking around. And so it kind of slowed down a few things. I had to take a couple of fights last minute because, well, I needed the money. But um, I'm really, right now, it's more of I'm getting a little older, and it's having to go into not using my knees quite as much. So I'm having to
Mhm.
move back toward boxing and kickboxing more than MMA. MMA is still my favorite, though.
Right,
Plan on
right,
taking as many. I'm going to take them as long as the commission will let me fight.
right, right. Um, so the team you train them in jujitsu,
It's Bout mixed martial arts.
boxing, and mixed martial arts. Okay. How big is your team?
Altogether, we've got about 16.
Okay,
I went
16.
about I went about 10 years ago and got certified under Boss Rutan and fighting his fight club.
Uh huh.
Um, been teaching guys in that ever since, and now we've branched off studying a little bit of Bang Muay Thai, which is Boss Rutan inspired by Dwayne Ludwig up in Westminster, Colorado.
Okay.
And I'm hoping to go there and train with him next month.
Yeah, you had mentioned that. Um, okay, and let's see what else. I know before you had mentioned previously you're a little interested in bare knuckle.
I always have been. I mean, I took pretty much a no rules fight a few years ago in Florida because it was an exhibition, and I really didn't want to do it until they told me we could do it without gloves. That's kind of always more fun. I mean, and it's easy for somebody outside to be like, those big padded gloves don't hurt. They hurt, but I would still rather have a fist coming at me than being beat to death with a pillow.
Right, right.
Well, I'd feel better to say Chris Lieben's hand gave me a concussion than some pad or something, you know?
Right, right. So, I heard recently that they're moving away from doing hand wraps in bare knuckle. What do you think
Yeah.
about that?
I like it. I mean, I never liked the idea of hand wraps anyway. I never have wrapped my hands for MMA. I mean, I was always taught to train barehanded and fight barehanded. The only
Yeah,
time I put gloves on is when they make me.
right. So, what do you
Even my
think that?
bag is.
Right. Yeah. What do you think that that'll do as far as fighters go? Do you think it'll mean they need more conditioning?
Ooh, it's going to take a lot more technique. It's like boxing's already more technical than MMA to begin with. And then whenever you start talking bare knuckle, at least with regular boxing, they wrap your hand up so tight that you
Hmm.
can't move it. And I mean, you could close your eyes and just start swinging against a brick wall and you're not going to break your hand. The second you take all that off, now you have to hit it just right or you're going to bust your knuckles. And then on
Right.
top of being able to hit just right, you've got to hit them in the right spot because now there's so many different little angles that you hit instead of you've got this big area that's going to smash them. Now you're going to hit them with maybe that one and that one or that one and that one, or you're going to get lucky if you catch them with two or three knuckles at a time where
Right.
you were spreading it across a big glove.
Yeah. Yeah. I was talking
Without the
actually.
hand wraps, so without the hand wraps, it's going to cause a lot of broken hands because a lot of the guys rely on those hand wraps. Like they said Mike Tyson got in three street fights ever and said he broke his hand in all three. I mean, that's because when he has boxing gloves on, it don't matter. That
Right.
monster can swing for the fences. But I mean, if anybody hits as hard as he does and hits anything else without gloves, it's gotta break their hand.
Right. Right. So you had mentioned that you had sustained some injuries. Were those fight related?
Well, I had a torn ACL that was fight related, and then one ankle injury that was fight related. But other than that, not really. I'll train, fight, and then when I'm walking out the building, I will trip and fall. It's horrible.
So coordinated when training, but then outside clumsy.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So after my high school, I was in high school tennis. I finished the championships. And I didn't win or anything, but I finished the championships. I walk out and I'm walking down the sidewalk talking to the coach. And I looked at him and I said, "So when are two-a-days going to start?" Right at that time, I stepped off the sidewalk, twisted my ankle, just dropped my butt on the sidewalk and just kind of sat there. He goes, "What's wrong?" I looked about and said, "Just tore about 4 ligaments in my ankle." And he's laughing, going, "Nah, it would hurt more than that. Come on." And I pulled up my shorts and it was my ankle done got that big, started turning black. So that's happened a few times.
I'm sorry.
No, oh, I understand. Trust me. I mean, I can't remember who it was. One of the UFC guys like won a title and then did a backflip and broke his ankle or his shin or something. This was a few years ago. But like that's what I could see me doing. Yay! I got the UFC championship. Woo! Clack. Oh, he's
Right.
crippled. He can never fight again. Got to give the title up.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I'm a klutz too. Okay. Talk a little bit about some of your most memorable fights.
Ooh, probably my first fight was pretty memorable because
Okay.
I had not boxed and I had not even had any boxing training in probably 6 years. Hadn't trained with anybody. And when I got hold of that first coach in Baton Rouge, I guess he misunderstood. He thought that I had still been training recently. So he booked me for a fight before I ever even met him. So my first fight was versus Jules Brochet. He ended up being an Ultimate Fighter.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew nothing but punch. I put him in a couple submissions, but I had no idea how to finish him. So that was pretty much just rolling around until he got on top of me, punched me till the ref stopped.
Right.
But probably the most exciting fight I probably say I ever had, and it ended kind of messed up. I fought Wes Shivers from the Tennessee Titans and the hold on, he played for somebody else too. Jacksonville Jaguars, I think. Anyway, he whenever they called me, they was like, "You fight Wes Shivers." I had no idea who this guy was. I was just kind of like, "Sure, no problem." And they were like, "Well, he's going to be super heavyweight." At that time, I was about 205. I was like, "Okay, when?" They said, "In a week." I said, "Okay, I guess so." So I started trying to gain weight, hitting the buffet. Got up to about 230, which wasn't nothing but fat to throw me off weight anyway. And then when I got there, he's 6'9", 295. And a little bigger than I thought he was going to be.
Right.
And then, I mean, pretty much I got at his legs. We just pretty much swung at each other for 2.5 rounds. And at the end of the second round, I was thinking to myself, this big guy's done won these first 2 rounds. I got to get back in there and win it now or it's over. So he's got his hands on his waist. I do too. We're staring at each other. I'm like, okay, got to get him or go. I hop, skip, jump, launch a punch. About midway to him, he caught me in the jaw, dropped me. Fight's over. And then in the back room, the ref goes, "I don't know why you did that, man. You know you could have ran and won." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "You won the first 2 rounds. All you had to do was stay alive for the third one." And I'm just thinking, somebody could have yelled that at me. Because, I mean, I could have just sat there and just dodged his punches and blocked him because we were both so tired he could barely pick his arms up. But, man, I sure gave him a perfectly good shot. It looks nice and pretty in the video.
Yeah.
But that's the fight. That's whenever I fought turned pro too early.
Okay.
I should have had about 10 more amateur fights, but they called me for that one because nobody else would fight the big monster, and they knew I would last minute. Like I say, the only thing that really bugged me about that was I tried to gain up, and then whenever I talked to Wes after the show, I was like, "Man, I'm sorry, dude. I would have been in better shape for this if I'd known a little earlier." And he's like, "Well, what did you weigh?" And I told him. He said, "Shoot, man, if somebody would have told me, I'd have cut to 265 for you." Thanks. But that's really been one of my main problems in fighting is my name has gotten around. They know I'll fight anybody anytime. They know if they called me right now to fight Mike Tyson tonight, I'm getting in the cage or in the ring. So they'll pick out their fighter that they want to fight me, train him for 3 or 4 months to fight me without calling me. Call me 3 days out whenever I'm 60, 70 pounds overweight, and I have to cut 60 or 70 pounds within 24 to 48 hours just to get on the scales. And then I got to try to crawl in the ring and fight somebody. And then the problem with that is when I get in the back and I'm talking to them, I'm like, "Look, man, I'm so sorry. I hadn't trained in a few weeks, and then I had to cut 65 pounds last night. I couldn't even make a fist." And they're like, "What? Wait, what? How long have you known you were fighting me?" I go, they call me Tuesday. "Man, your name's been next to mine on the board. I've been trying to fight you for 6 months," which that just means that they waited on purpose until the week of the fight to call me and say, "Oh, that guy's got dropped out. Can you take his place?" Because they know I'll fill any spot.
Right. Right. There's good things to that, and then there's disadvantages to that, like you mentioned. Like
Oh, yeah. So
particularly
I've
when
got a
you're
couple
trying.
of good fights like that.
So, any other memorable fights?
One very interesting one. Well, I guess 2. One, they called me up and said, "Hey, you want to come fight Austin Lane?" I heard the name. I really didn't have any idea. I said, "You know what? Sure, I'll be there in a little bit." I took off the next day. I get there, and I mean, I see him sitting across the room. So somebody's like, "Oh, there's Austin." I'm like, Okay, well, he's sitting around a bunch of guys. Well, I thought he was standing up. They were all standing around him. And somebody said, "You're fighting that big guy?" I said, "Well, yeah." I said, "They don't really get too big, so it'll be all right." And then we got in the ring, and whenever I walk up to him and touch gloves with him, I felt like I was fighting Goliath. I mean, he
But you're
wasn't
a
near as
big
big as
guy. You're a
Wes.
big guy.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't as big as Wes. And I mean, Wes 6'9", 295. This guy was like 6'7", probably 265, but still, that's not what I was expecting. I was expecting normal human being. I mean, I got him in a electric chair trying to stretch him out, and I'm sitting there and supposed to be like around his ankle, splitting his legs, and I'm going, "Why isn't this working? This big guy is not this flexible." And I look down to where my legs are supposed to be around his ankle. They are around his knee. This big monster is so long, I am all the way wrapped around his thigh and his knee instead of his leg and his ankle.
Single.
And I mean, and the ref ended up stopping the fight. But one of my best wins, though, they were calling me down to Island Fights pretty often. And a couple of their guys beat me. They called me a few days out for those. I filled the spot. And then they called me in for their leg lock monster. I cannot remember his name. He just about everybody I fought from there pretty much either got a Bellator or a UFC contract after they beat me. So this guy was up next because Dana White comes to all their shows. And then I beat him. And you just hear everybody cussing. You see the promoter get up and start throwing stuff next to the ring and take off. But it was a fun fight, and I love fighting for him. Like, that's really one of the best shows I've been to. They really thought this guy was going to win, and they were so upset when he didn't.
That it can be disappointing if you do have a lot of faith in someone and you're expecting them to move forward and then they have that loss. So, do you have any good advice for, because you've been in combat sports for a long time. Do you have any good advice for fighters starting out?
Always remember that if you're not fighting in your hometown, they're calling you to lose. That's just how it works. If the promoter, unless you've got some promoter from across the world that came to your town, maybe he wants you to win, maybe he wants them to win or whatever. But 90% of the time, you're going to some promoter's home area where he has his own team, and his plan is to put all his guys on one side of the card, and he's not going to book the other side with guys that are going to crush his guys. I mean, that just wouldn't make sense. So they're either going to be looking for good fights where the guy's barely going to win, where their guy's barely going to win, or they're going to be looking for knockouts for some of their guys. And that's every show. That's not saying any show is worse than the other one, but I mean, a lot of it comes down to money too. That's like with the Ultimate Fighter. 70% of the fighters are cut from the interview phase before you ever watch them punch or do a squat or anything. But it's all about the most marketable fighters. I can say that's one reason why I get booked a lot. At weigh-ins, I've usually got blood coming down my face, and I've got clown paint on, and I got 2 labres here and 5 in each ear, and put on a good show for them anyway.
Right.
And pretty much everybody I've fought that I've had over 2 weeks to train for, I've beat. Like, I'd say 90% of my losses were 4 days to get ready. Now, I can say there were a couple of guys on there. I don't know if I'd have beat them or not if I'd had time, but there's a couple of guys on there I can tell you I would have needed 6 more months of training, even if I was ready right then to beat. Like Walt Harris, he's in the UFC now. I wasn't getting through him that night. I don't care how good a shape I was in. I might can handle him now. I would love to give it a try, but I wouldn't be putting no money on it.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, I'd love to fight Tyson too, but I mean, I'm not going to be putting money that I'm going to beat him.
Right. I was reading something somewhere about Tyson possibly having a fight, maybe an exhibition fight. I don't know.
Yeah, I can't remember who they said he was going to come back and fight. I saw it pop up on my Facebook the other day, and it said official, but who knows? People make memes and stuff all the time.
Exactly, exactly. So,
He's definitely planning on coming back. I think he's supposed to fight Roy Jones Jr.
I have to look into
Yeah,
that.
because Roy Jones's coach asked to be my friend on Facebook the other day, and I got all excited. He hadn't spoke to me. He has not spoken to me, and he may never. But I felt happy that he asked to be my friend on Facebook. So.
Right, right. You just kind of sometimes you feel privileged. It's like, okay.
So actually got to be on one show with him years ago.
Oh,
It
really?
was one show that was So he was the main event, and then like the two fights below that were all Ultimate Fighters. So that was probably one of the biggest shows I got to be in,
Okay.
other than the Dominican Republic. My biggest fight ever was the Dominican Republic versus Lex McMahon last November in the Dominican Republic. So that was great, but I got messed up that. The only thing I got messed up that fight, I can't blame that on nobody but me. I ended up stuck in a place where I didn't have food for 2 weeks before the fight. Then I missed my plane. So I ended up with no sleep and no food for a couple of days before the fight. It's like, that ain't nobody's fault but mine, but doggone.
I
Bad
know,
luck
right?
follows me.
Definitely disadvantage before a big fight. That's for sure, right?
Oh, yeah. And one thing I can say, anybody that is trying to cut weight and someone says, stop eating on Monday and don't eat till the fight, or take a whole bunch of amphetamines before the fight because it'll help you go longer, or any of that stupid crap, it does not make you go farther. It's just going to make you get tired quicker, and you're going to be laying there about to die 20 seconds into the fight. And then whenever it all kicks back in, and 20 seconds later, you're going to be jumping around acting like a fool after the fight's over with, wanting the fight to go back, yelling at the referee, and him going, "You were about to die, man. I had to stop it."
Yeah. I mean, cuts and gains are both hard because like you're not used to fighting at that weight, so it takes some readjustment to be able to go the rounds. I
Oh
mean,
yeah,
you have to
I mean,
condition yourself. So,
I do better cutting weight, but like when I gained that 20 pounds for Wes, God, that was harder to fight than cutting 60 pounds for somebody else, because it was like my body was at least strong enough to handle that lighter weight. It was just a little weak. Putting that extra 20 pounds on, my body wasn't even used to moving that way.
right, right, because of the extra weight.
Oh, yeah.
So, you said you're looking to go to Colorado to train? Is
Yeah,
your team,
hope
does your
so.
team go with you?
No, no. If they have the money, they're more than welcome to. But at this point, it looks like we're going to be staying in a hotel about 3 miles from the gym, and our morning warm up's going to be jogging to the gym
To the
every day.
gym, right? Hey, but that works, right?
Oh yeah. So I'd really like to go back over and train with Boss, but he doesn't have too much time. He's doing a lot of movie stuff, and to ask Boss Rutan to, hey, come train me, I don't have the money for that.
Right, right. Training is
And I
expensive.
mean, now I mean, doesn't. Oh yeah, and don't get me wrong. Now, if they were fixing to put me versus Anderson Silva or somebody, he would probably be calling saying, "Hey, you need some training." But
Right?
for something I'm not going to make a lot of money in, so he definitely won't make a lot of money in. I wouldn't even bother him and ask him. But
Right,
I
right.
had asked him one time. I had asked him one time about UFC fights. I said, I want to come train with you and get better so I can get my UFC fight. He said, "Well, what's your main goal? Get better or UFC fight?" I said, "Well, I mean, really both, but I mean, I guess the end goal is UFC." He said, "Move to Vegas." He said, "It'll be very unlikely you get one while you're living anywhere else than Vegas." I was like, "What do you mean? There's guys from all over the country fighting." He said, "Yeah, but they mostly live in Vegas when they fight." And one of the other guys explained it to me. I said, "Why would they keep getting guys from Vegas? Why would the guys move to Vegas? Why do they keep getting Vegas guys?" Because if they didn't, the UFC would have to pay travel money for every fighter to fly in and hotels and all that. So instead, there's 5,000 pro fighters in Vegas probably. So the second that it's, oh, we can't find one, or this guy wants travel to come in, or we have to pay all this extra for this guy, they can just open the door and holler outside, we need a 205. And
Right.
there's going to be 30 guys line up.
Yep. I hear you there. You also mentioned that you do movies.
Yeah, I'm usually an extra in movies, trying to get some better parts. I've auditioned for a few speaking roles and whatnot, but I got lucky enough to be the cornerman for the in the first scene of One Night in Miami with the guy that was fighting Muhammad Ali, and then I've got a few other little parts, but nothing really major.
So you
Usually just the guy in the background.
just the guy in the background, but I mean, it's still fun and to be part of a production.
Oh yeah, I said I was actually in one. I really can't tell you about it right now, but it
The
was
one
in
you're
the
working
new.
on.
Well, no, we've already done it, but it's just in production. It's the Morgan Freeman Great Escapes,
Uh-huh.
but it's it's reenactments of real prison breaks.
Oh, okay. That sounds
It's like I
cool.
can't tell you much more than that because all that's on the internet, but I can't tell you any more than that, or they'll be done hit me with an
Right.
NDA.
So did you get to meet Morgan Freeman?
No, I didn't get to meet him. Now I can't remember the movie I was on a few months ago. I did get to meet Tiffany Haddish one day though,
Oh, okay.
and that was awesome. Oh, and One Night in Miami, I got to meet Regina King. She's really great.
Oh yeah, yeah.
If you don't remember her, if you don't remember who she is, she was Craig's little sister on Friday.
Yes, yes. I know who Regina
I
King
mean, she was
is.
on 227. She's done a lot of other stuff, but everybody either knows her from 22. No, mostly know her from 227 or Friday. But she was really sweet. She was back there jumping rope with us.
So, we talked about movies. So, have you ever had like a fan moment with another fighter that you've met that was like attending maybe one of your shows?
Well, I'd say my biggest fan moment was when I went and trained with Boss Rutan.
Okay.
I mean, I've trained with other fighters. I mean, my boxing coach when I was going to him, he was also training Tim Crater, Kyle Bradley, and Rich Clemente. But don't get me wrong. I've watched those guys train. I've watched them fight, and they are all amazing fighters. But when you stand in the presence of Boss Rutan, it makes you wonder how anybody ever fought him. I mean, just him standing there talking to you. He's supposed to be the same height and weight class as me. And he put a Rev Gear pad. I don't know if you ever messed with the Rev Gear pads. They're like the tank of
A
kicking
pad, yeah.
pads. Yeah, he puts this up. My buddy puts it over his thigh for Boss to show him how to throw a kick. And it looked like he did it nice and slow. My buddy goes, and just sat there, wouldn't open his mouth for like 10 minutes. I'm like, you all right? Whenever Boss left, he had a spot about that big black on his thigh. And it didn't look like he kicked him that hard. It looked like he legitimately just showed him how to kick it, but he was limping around for 3 days. And whenever his boss goes, oh, you want to sprawl. I've never seen it happen like that. It looks like he might kill somebody if he sprawls on them. I couldn't imagine fighting him. I asked him at that time. I said, it was about 10 years ago. I was like, man, look, Randy Couture's still coming back fighting. You need to get back in the ring. And he said his knees are too messed up. But, man, I was like, go to Muay Thai. It's like, Jesus, you would kill everybody.
Right? So,
I've stood in front of guys, especially like pro wrestlers and stuff. I've stood next to Hulk Hogan. Boss Rutan is much more intimidating than a 7 foot tall, 400-pound man. He looks like somebody that ought to be on a movie that they just give him some fangs and he just runs through ripping everybody's heads off.
that sounds interesting.
I didn't expect that. I've seen him on TV. I've been around other UFC fighters and stuff, and they're all pretty cool. But just his presence is just like, I feel like I'm with somebody like 10 levels higher than me. It's like being in Dragon Ball Z, when they're like, I can sense his power. It's just too high. That's the way I feel. It's like, I've got a 500, he's got a 50,000. I don't want to make him mad.
Right. But I mean, you did train with him, and now you're training other fighters. So I mean,
Yes.
that's always great. So definitely
Oh,
passing
yeah.
that knowledge on. So
Yeah, and it's nice to and that's nice to actually have a couple guys in the UFC that are using the style now. Before it'd kind of be like, well, who's using it? I can tell you a few clubs using it. Boss Rutan's club, Randy Couture, Ken Shamrock's, because they all helped create the system. But when it comes to specific fighters, I couldn't point out too many of them. But TJ Dillashaw
uh-huh.
is one of the guys that's always using our system, and he's one of the best at it. And he shows it every time he gets in the ring.
So if you're around Mississippi and you need somebody to train with, go see Dustin, right?
That's right. That's right. And if you have a big gym out of town, I'll come train with you.
Right, right. Get some business in there going.
Absolutely.
Okay. So, let's see what else. Um, so ultimately, I know that you said that you're towards the end of your more of your MMA stuff. Um, what are
Well,
your
I hope I'm
future?
not, but
I mean, you are getting older. I mean, and we've seen a lot
I
of
mean,
like I've seen a lot of transition from like UFC, MMA, over to boxing and bare knuckles. So I mean, a lot of people
oh, I've
that's
had
what they do. So
I've had the Mississippi commissioner, the Louisiana commissioner, and one big promoter out of Las Vegas I fought for. He was just like, they were all like, you're getting a little old, dude. Why don't you go to boxing? Well, you really need to go to bare knuckle because there's less concussions. So it's always a good idea. But
right, throw that out there, right? He's down to fight bare knuckle people.
I got shoot. I was planning on heading over to Boss Rutan. Had a bare knuckle fight a couple years ago. And I was planning on getting over there to that, but from what I understand, they had some issues. I don't know if it was the promoters or the money or what, but it was enough problem to where they didn't have it again. Now I think the only other bare knuckle thing going on is Ken Shamrock's, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. Let's see. The other thing we were going to discuss, I did kind of mention because BKFC 19 is on Friday. Are you gonna be watching that, or do you have any? Did you look to see who was fighting? Have any picks for that?
Oh yeah. Oh man, I hope Paige Van Zant wins.
Oh, right. She's on my list too of one of my
Oh
picks.
yeah.
So I think she'll
I
take
can't wait
it.
to watch them fight.
And the rest of the male population. there's there's a reason they're the main event.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. It's like I have guys show up all the time. They'll be like, "I want to fight. I want to fight anybody," or they'll say something stupid like, "I want to fight the UFC champ," and I'm like, "And?" They're like, "Well, put me against him." How do you want me to do that? Well, tell him I challenge him. And I thought if you were a pro, you couldn't deny a challenge. Like, man, you've been watching too many movies.
Right,
You
right.
really think? I'm like, you really think that everybody in the UFC under him in his weight class wouldn't be challenging him for the belt? I mean, there would be a long line if you could just challenge people.
Right, right. And matchmakers, I think the last BKFC card, oh, where'd Justin go? Well, the last BKFC card, what I was saying as I wait for Justin to hop back on was that, oh, there he is. Hold on, just 1 second. And switch you here. I'm gonna make you big. Just a second, Justin. Okay.
It's okay.
You got disconnected. Um, so what I was saying was that what I noticed from the last BKFC card was that was the first time I actually researched the fighters and like how much work it takes into like matching up fighters for a good fight. I mean,
Oh
because you
God.
want someone that has like a similar record. You don't want the difference in like reach and stuff to be too much crazy because like it causes. I mean, sometimes it's an advantage for fighters or disadvantage. Um, and just I don't know. I just have a lot more respect for matchmakers because there's a lot of work that goes into like trying to get a good fight and matching up those fighters.
Yeah, I
So,
mean, I know it's horrible when you go to a show and every show ends in a 3 second. I mean, every fight ends in a 3 second knockout. I mean, anybody can knows real quick. There's no way that everybody on that side of the card should have won with a knockout in under 5 seconds.
right, right. And
I
I
mean,
that's not a to me that's not a good fight. I want at least a
no, that's
couple rounds
horrible.
in,
And I mean, there's usually a couple of quick knockouts from a couple of guys on there just to fill out the card. But yeah, that's the big problem is trying to find two guys that'll put on a good fight.
right?
That's how I usually end up getting called. It's because they know I'm going to go 100 miles an hour and try to kill the guy. Because see
Right.
that I'm like Tyson. I'm not trying to fight you. I'm not trying to beat you. I'm trying to kill you or cripple you as fast as I can within the rules. The ref is there to save you. If the ref doesn't save you quick enough, you will never fight again. I feel like that's the same thing coming at me, so that's the same thing I'm dealing out. Just like
Right.
I remember I watched Frank Shamrock the other night talking about when he fought Boss Rutan. He was like, it scared the crap out of me. He had me in a choke and he's sitting there squeezing me going, I'm going to kill you. You're never going to see your family again. This is the end of it. And he's like, I just was freaking out. I kept hyperventilating.
Right.
Yep.
I mean, that's
Because
scary, especially if you're in a
Boss would have
chokehold
snapped.
too.
Oh yeah,
So,
Boss would have snapped his neck if he had to win.
okay, so of course you're going to be rooting for Paige. Anyone else?
Oh yeah. Uh, I don't know, not really. I just can't wait to watch the fights.
Right, right. Me too.
So they always put on
Uh,
some good shows.
I'm telling you that last card. I watched all the fights from the app, and it was like really. I don't know, like I like being in person at a fight, but like you definitely, I will say that the app you get those angles that you don't get, like if you're there in person and you miss stuff. And of course you can go back and watch it again, but yeah, like I don't know, like I will say in person though, if you're at an event, like there's just like the electricity, like it's great.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So one of
um,
my main problems for years was my anxiety. I mean, my anxiety would get so high. By the time it didn't matter how good a shape I was in. By the time I got to the cage, my adrenaline done went up and down 15 times, and I was ready to go to sleep.
oh, I
The only
bet, I
thing,
bet
so
that's
the only
exhausting.
thing, oh yeah, the only thing that finally got me to where I could keep going was Boss in the back room whenever he was ready to warm up. I mean, he completely gasses himself out. I mean, 100 miles an hour for like 30-minute warm up till he's sweating, dying, about to puke in the corner. Then they call him and say, "Why do you do that?" He's like, "Because I want my second wind to hit when I hit the cage. I don't need it to hit when the fight's over."
Right,
So
right.
I tried it a couple times and it worked.
It works.
Oh yeah.
Well, that's another jewel of advice there for fighters. If you haven't found your perfect strategy yet of preparing before an event, so definitely there's that. Anything else you want to add, Justin?
Not other than be careful when you cut weight.
All
If it's going
right.
to take you over 3 or 4 days to cut weight, don't do it. Most UFC clubs, if you're over 10 pounds out of your weight class, they're going to move you a weight class. So if you're running around 40 pounds over your weight class in your fights in 3 weeks, you got some work to do.
Right, right. Well, I just I've had friends that cut weight and had medical issues because of cuts. And
Oh, I've went blind and I've got to where I was peeing blood, and I mean it's been bad.
yeah, I mean, I definitely think it's advantageous for people to try to stay around their walking weight as much as to try to fight around that weight. I mean, so you're not doing those big cuts.
Like
So,
when I first started, they would have me stop and drinking water on Monday, stop eating. We'd go all week with none of that. Now, I pretty much I weigh my weight until the day before the fight, and I cut it all within. I cut right at 5 pounds every 30 minutes. But doing a shower, hot bathtub thing. That
uh-huh.
way, I get. That way, it's like okay, I'm fine. Then I'm dehydrated. I weigh, and then I start pumping fluid back in. As opposed to the other way, it was like over here, I'm starting cutting my water. Now I'm really dehydrated, really dehydrated. Now my muscles have been dehydrated for 5 days before I fight. And
Right,
now I'm just going to slam them full of fluid and expect them to work right. The idea is to try to get the fluid out, weigh, and get it back in as soon as
right,
possible so your body doesn't have the adverse reactions. I mean, I've had fights where I was in great shape, cut 70 pounds, go, whoo, 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 and next thing you know, I'm having to go because I can't make a fist or bend my wrist back.
because of the dehydration. Yeah. So,
Yep.
great advice. Definitely great advice. All right. Well, thank you for joining us today, Justin.
Thank you
And
for having
thank
me, sweetie.
and thank you for being a friend. So,
Always.
yeah. So if anyone is in the Mississippi area, hit Justin up for some training because he's the man. He's fought a lot of people, and he's trained with Boss. So definitely a skill set there that not everyone has. Um, and Hit him up on Facebook. You're just under Justin Ray Thornton on Facebook, right?
Yep, that's it.
All right. And well, thank you for joining us, and I'll talk to you later.
All right, sweetie. Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Bye.